Hey, what's up guys? How's it going? This is Watch, and in this video we'll be doing a direct head-to-head comparison between the Asus ZenWatch and the Samsung Gear S. Now the Gear S and the Asus ZenWatch are really quite different wearable devices. The Asus specifically is very economically priced. It's very aggressive in terms of its value proposition, versus the Gear S is probably one of the most feature-packed device that you can actually put on your wrist. So let's go ahead and compare the two and see how they fare against each other. Now, in terms of the overall design and physical dimensions of these two smartwatches, we can see that the Asus ZenWatch is a very overall pretty compact. It only measures about 7.9 millimeters in terms of its thickness versus the 12.5 millimeters on the Samsung Gear S is quite a lot thicker. Additionally, in terms of footprint differences, the ZenWatch measures about 51 millimeters in terms of its height and under 40 millimeters in terms of its overall width, versus the Gear S is certainly larger at 58.1 millimeters, but pretty much the same width as the ZenWatch. Now, funny enough, both of the designs incorporate a curved display. Now, obviously on the Samsung Gear S, this is the most exaggerated curve I've ever seen in most modern day consumer devices, and it definitely has a unique overall design because of that curved display. And I also like how it kind of wraps around your whole entire wrist to kind of give it the impression that it is smaller than it actually is. Now, the ZenWatch has a much more subtler curve on its display, and it's definitely helpful to have rounded edges all around the actual display itself, especially when it's running Android Wear, which uses a lot of different gesture controls. That kind of makes things a little bit more streamlined and easier to use, especially when you're swiping back and forth between certain commands and applications. Now, in terms of the overall build quality materials, the Gear S is made out of primarily polycarbonate plastics. It doesn't have kind of a cheap feeling towards it, but it definitely doesn't feel as premium as what we see in the Asus ZenWatch, which is primarily made out of stainless steel construction. It definitely has a very high quality overall finish and feel towards it, and it feels more premium than it actually costs, which is always a good thing. Now, they're both water resistant. The Gear S is IP67 certified, and the Asus is IP55 certified. Basically, the Gear S is officially certified for dust, but you both can get them wet and even drop them in water for a little bit, and you won't fry your device. Additionally, Asus has designed a pretty cool way to change out the different strap options, and eventually there'll be more strap options. We have kind of a tan leather finish. It's a genuine leather strap, which feels very comfortable in the hand, and I do like the overall color. But if you don't like the color, there are going to be several options available to you, and it's really easy to swap out the straps. It's a little bit more difficult to get different customized looks on the Samsung Gear S. It basically comes in black and white. And although you can remove the strap on the Samsung Gear S and replace it with a third-party one, it's certainly not as streamlined and as easy to do as what we see in the ZenWatch. Now, in terms of the clasp, the Asus ZenWatch uses a metal clasp that is actually a mechanical button release system, so you can actually press on the two buttons on the side of the clasp and release the watch. And this is great because it won't accidentally come off when you're doing some kind of exercising or some kind of sports activity like it can on the Gear S, so it's definitely a little bit more thought out. Now, the main method of controlling the interface of these two smartwatches is using the capacitive touchscreen. Now, the Gear S also has a home button at the bottom of the device, which is very easy to press, and it kind of is reminiscent of what you would find in a lot of those smartphones that Samsung makes. Now, the Asus ZenWatch has probably one of the worst designed power standby switches I've ever seen in any consumer electronic device. If you want to turn on the device when you first get it, or turn it off for whatever reason, if you're going to a movie theater or something, you pretty much have to take off the watch, and there's this tiny little button at the back of the actual watch that you have to hold down for like 4 or 5 seconds, and then it will respond and shut it down or turn it on. And this notion is probably one of the worst aspects of this watch, and I can't believe that a reputable and sensible company like Asus would ever let a thing like this fly. Now, the only major feature that the Asus ZenWatch does not have compared to most of its contemporaries is a heart rate monitor. And we do have an optical heart rate sensor on the bottom of the Gear S, which is nice to see, but no heart rate monitor on the Asus ZenWatch. Now, one of my favorite features about both devices is the fact that they have OLED screens, which is not only beneficial in terms of color vibrancy and overall kind of experience of using the device, but it's also beneficial in terms of battery life, because basically any many regions of the screens that don't need to be on are completely off, and you're not using any energy lighting unnecessary items or regions on the screen. So you're just looking at what needs to be lit, and that's definitely going to be a benefit in terms of overall experience and battery life. So both get a big thumbs up for me there. Now, in terms of overall resolution and size, the Asus ZenWatch measures about 1.63 inches versus 2-inch display on the Gear S. In terms of resolution, we have 360 by 480 on the Gear S and about 320 by 320 on the Asus ZenWatch. Furthermore, in terms of internal specifications, the Asus is very similar to most of the Android Wear devices that are out there, using the Snapdragon 400 quad-core chip clocked at about 1.2 gigahertz with 512 megabytes of RAM and 4 gigabytes of internal memory. The Gear S is using a dual-core processor clocked at about 1 gigahertz, and it is very fast. It's just as fast as any Android Wear devices, and it is using a different architecture, so it is optimized to run with its operating system, which is Tizen, that we'll talk about in a little bit. You also do have 512 megabytes of RAM on the Gear S and the same amount of internal media storage capacity. Now, in terms of connectivity, both have NFC and Bluetooth, with the big exception that the Gear S is pretty much can be considered a miniaturized smartphone because it connects to your mobile network via a nano SIM that you insert at the bottom of the device. And when you do that, you have access to HSDPA internet speeds, as well as you can make and take phone calls. Now, you do still need to be paired to your Samsung smart device when you are initially setting up the Gear S, but once that initial setup process is done, you can use the watch independently. And when you are using the watch, one thing you'll notice is that this is not using Android Wear. It's like we mentioned before, it's using a Tizen-based wearable platform, and Tizen is basically Samsung's completely custom OS that they've designed to work perfectly with the Samsung lineup and ecosystem of their products, which is certainly kind of a line out of Apple's books. And in terms of functionality, Tizen offers everything that a modern smart device should offer in terms of getting notifications and using your S-Voice system to access certain information on the web and on your smartphone and things like that. And you also do have some multimedia features. You have an MP3 player as well as a photo and video viewer, which is kind of interesting. Now, comparing the Tizen base wearable platform to Google Android Wear, it is certainly more of a lines of what you would find in a traditional smartphone, where you have proper menu systems and you can access different things a little bit more of a chronological order, versus Google Android Wear is more of a conduit towards your phone. It's primarily designed to be a companion towards your Android smartphone. So things like notifications and pausing and playing music and adjusting volume and things like that are good. If you listen to a lot of podcasts, it's excellent because you can control it on your wrist, and it makes certain things like driving and things like that a little bit less finicky, because you don't have to always reach for your smartphone, although you should be concentrating on your driving anyways. But now, in terms of the app market, Google Android Wear definitely has a much more solid library of applications that developers are designing every day, and there's always something unique and interesting always available. But based on my experience so far, I would definitely say that 90% of them are kind of useless at this point. We're really early in the developmental cycle of all these wearable devices. One thing I do have to say is that Tizen's application market is pretty weak. It's even weaker than what we find in Google Android Wear. So far, there's a lot of different applications that you're going to have to pay $2 or $3 for, and there's not a lot of free options, and that's kind of ridiculous to find. And I think it might be a misstep for Samsung in the future, because if they want to get developers on, they need a large, healthy number of users downloading their mobile apps on kind of a constant basis to keep Tizen afloat. And perhaps this departure from Google Android Wear might be a misstep, but they're still making some Wear devices like the Gear Live. So there's lots of opportunities for Samsung to kind of go forward with their application development, but so far Tizen is not looking as promising as Samsung wants us to believe. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is overall battery life, and I think both of these really excel at that. Now, I'm a huge fan of what the Gear S can deliver in terms of battery. It has a 300 milliamp hour battery compared to 360 milliamp hour battery on the Asus ZenWatch, and both can deliver at least 2 days of usage. Now, if you have the mobile network on the Gear S, you're going to get about a day to a day and a half, but if you have it off, you're going to get the same battery performance. One other cool aspect I like about the Gear S is that it actually has a charging dock that doubles as a battery extender. It has a built-in 350 milliamp hour battery, so you can kind of charge both at the same time, and then when you run out of juice, you can put on the little charging dock and basically keep on charging. Now, the charging interface on both of them are kind of clunky and certainly not as satisfying as some of the charging methodologies we see on something like the Moto 360 or the LG G Watch R. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is the overall price point between these two smartwatches. Now, the Asus ZenWatch is coming under the $200 mark, which is definitely going to be popular for a lot of different people trying to get into the wearable devices. Now, a lot of people are going to definitely have a hard time trying to justify the $300+ mark on the Samsung Gear S. Now, you do have to consider that it is kind of a miniaturized mobile phone because of its data connectivity to your mobile network. So the price is certainly there for a reason, and plus you have a heart rate monitor. The Asus does not have a heart rate monitor, unfortunately. But overall, to determine the right smartwatch for you, you're definitely going to have to compare and contrast the pros and cons of each device, and hopefully this comparison gave you some insight towards which device is more best suited towards your needs. But if you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments section down below. Make sure to give us a thumbs up if this video helped you out in any way, and thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you later. Take care.